this out. And we're live. Fantastic. Just make sure everything's... Yep, we are definitely live. So, okay. I can't see people in the audience. I know people are itching. We are streaming both to YouTube and LinkedIn at the same time, right? This is my inauguration live stream, so if there's any technical hitches, fail fast and all that good stuff, right? But welcome to Code to Cloud. And we've had this one in the books for a couple of weeks. I had to move it, right? Personal stuff. But we're going to be talking about the GitHub certifications, right? They just recently got announced. I know, I did some partner ones a couple of years back. They were some of the hardest exams that I'd ever taken, by the way, right? 260 questions, I think one of them was, right? So I'm hoping there's a lot less, right, in the new ones. But I've been seeing Andrew, as always. We're always staying in touch, right? We both live in Canada, and it's him been developing the new GitHub foundational certification training path that he's been doing. He's been talking a lot about it on social media, so I thought I'd get him in. Andrew, good to have you, man. What have you been up to?
Oh, what have I been up to? Just looking at tomatoes, trying to grow any kind of tomato for the upcoming summer. My summer, as you know, shows up in like June. So it's a bit, or even spring, I should say. It's really far out there, but just really looking excited for some fresh vegetables.
Nice. I like this. I mean, Andrew does a lot of good tech content. But I always love the little side stories that Andrew's doing in and around his home, right? So he's either trying to grow vegetables or he's renovating. Like when he renovated the room behind him, he gave a Twin Peaks reference. I don't know if I was the only person that got it, but it was very much the log lady, right? Which is going on right at the moment. But I love it, man. But yeah, so I've got us a deck to share. We're just gonna walk through stuff. We're gonna talk about briefly how to prep for certifications. Andrew's got obviously his own Exam Pro platform, right? And he does stuff on Free Code Camp. Just keeps on giving. But let's get some sharing underway. So let's see if this works. Share screen. Awesome. We can all see that, right?
Yep.
Do you know what? I actually need training on this sometimes.
Good. Well, it still says pre live in LinkedIn.
Pre-live.
Yeah, it says pre live in LinkedIn. I'll check the YouTube though.
Mate, do you know what? Schoolboy error there, right?
Oh.
Right, now we're live.
Oh, okay. People can just get caught up.
I'm really sorry, right? Hey, so on YouTube, it just goes live. On LinkedIn, you have to press a big button, right, to release it, which we kind of like. So we just basically did some introductions. We talked about the weather, and we talked about Andrew growing vegetables, right? But yeah, for folks that have just joined, I'm Kevin Evans. Welcome to Code to Cloud. We've got Andrew Brown from Exam Pro again. So hopefully everyone should see the slide deck in front of us, right? So we're going to talk about GitHub certification pathways today. Let's get the show on the road. So as we know, Andrew, right, they released 4 pathways, quite similar to the Azure pathway, right? Well, it is Microsoft at the end of the day, right? So they've tried to tie the scope down to particular roles, right, or particular interests. I know we're going to talk a lot about the GitHub Foundations today, what you found in there, if it's holistic. I'm going to ask the $1 million question and actually ask you if it actually teaches you Git, right? Because I think it goes hand in hand, right?
I think the thing is that you have to know a bit of Git, but I think the reason they left it out was so that I could run my Git bootcamp. As that has been, I'm serious. That's like the number one thing. yeah, GitHub is so generous that they just left it out there for me. And you know, I am going to run a Git bootcamp because it's like the number one thing that folks wanted to learn how to do. But yeah, you do need to know some Git. When I made my GitHub Foundations course, I made a quick and dirty crash course into Git. But you know, if you really need to know it for the job, you're going to have to go a little bit beyond that certification there.
Do you know? I'm going to just talk about this as a segue a little bit, but yeah, I remember when I started my developer experiences, and I've talked about this recently, and people just expect you to know Git, and it can go really deep, right? It's basically built for version history and getting you out of trouble when you overcommit code and all that good stuff, right? But no one actually teaches you how to do it. And then when you do normally find someone that can teach you, right, in the workplace, they normally overcomplicate it so much that you just sort of zone zone out, right? Rebasing and all that kind of good stuff. And all you want to know is, what do I need to do to add comments or commit code or pull down a repo or setting it up? Like, and we'll get onto this late, but setting up your username and password, right? That, how many times have we all been there? You go to commit your first piece of code on a freshly set up machine and you forgot to set your email and username up, right? You can't commit. So, but yeah,
And so the number one or best or most advanced Git skill you could learn, and this was taught to me by a principal engineer, is
right.
that if anything goes wrong with your repo, you just delete the folder and reclone it. So you don't have to learn all the branching or merging. Just delete the repo and pull it on down. But yeah, I mean, it's a super valuable skill, and I again, I didn't realize that there was such a gap in it. And so, like when I ran my last boot camp, I decided to do feature branches, and then things got really spaghetti for people, and then they're like, I really want to know Git. So yeah, it's a extremely valuable skill.
It's like on par with, you should know how to use Outlook, right? Or Word or whatever. It's like, it's expected, but like no one actually teaches you, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah,
We also have GitHub Actions, right? For the pipeline pieces.
powerful tool. Yeah,
Really powerful. I think it's great. I came from an Azure DevOps background, right? So there are differences. It's formulated in a different way, right? Slightly. So understanding how that works, you know, is really important. And then obviously we can't forget security, because GitHub is actually a platform, right? I dub it SharePoint for developers. That's my joke, right? So understanding, yeah, how to secure branches, repos. Not only that, there's obviously other tools outside of the platform that help um, build in great security configuration, so it can go quite deep. And then there's GitHub admin, right? So general admin sort of certification. We'll dig deeper on that.
yeah. You know, mostly the enterprise stuff, I believe there
Yeah.
is yeah, which I know enough about, but I got to really click that 30-day trial for that enterprise, and as soon as I click that button, then I have to make the course. So been a little bit hesitant to do that yet.
So we always talk about North Star, right? When it comes to certs,
Mm-hmm.
book the exam. If you book something, it means you've committed to it. It means you can work towards it, right? You've got a date. I don't know what your experiences is on, Andrew, but I have to do it. Otherwise, I'd rather go and play Xbox.
For this particular certification, I've never done this before, but I told people to go book it before I even had a study exam because I was so excited for it. I was like, I booked it, and then all of a sudden, just so many people were booking because I was like, I booked it. Who else is going to book? And everyone's like, we're all in. And I'm like, oh darn! I guess I have to really deliver that certification course, and so I had to for the foundations, right? So I
Yeah.
had to work day and night for 4 days, which is fine. I'm used to that kind of grind, but I didn't think people were going to jump in on it. And it was like the first moment I felt like an influencer, and so now I have more social responsibility to be like, you should book your exam, but wait till I'm 100% done the course and give yourself some padding, right? But no disasters. But I'm just saying, I was like, whoa,
I like that.
yeah,
So it's like you went out, and I've done this before. You've publicly gone out and gone, do the exam, right? And it does put pressure on you to do the course, right, and understand it. So booking
Yeah.
the exam, right? It's always best to work towards something and count down from something, right? Than then not have it
Hmm.
there because you'll never follow through.
Well, and some people they just think that they're never ready, right? And
No,
sometimes it's like your driving tests. You got to get on that highway. You're never going to be ready for it. You're always going to be stressed for it. And even if you fail, it's good to put something on the date so you can work towards that, because even that failure, as long as it doesn't cost you too much money, which by the way, it doesn't, because I don't know if you saw, but like
no.
we might have suggested that they lower the price on the cert,
I
and they
saw
might
you had a
have
bit of a
listened to us.
yeah, yeah. You had like a bit of a public crusade going on, right? And you got them to
Yeah.
you took full ownership of this, right? But
I mean, I think the thing is like, so for those who don't know, when the certifications first came out, they were priced at $200 evenly across the
oh
board.
wow, okay,
Um, yeah, yeah, and so again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on what the certification is, what's the knowledge you're getting, what is the format of the exam. But for something like this, it just didn't make sense, and it wasn't necessarily that I was at the beginning saying this is too expensive, but like I noticed hundreds of people going, I'm interested in the certification. I'll never pay the price. So I actually went and collected every single person that said it and then amplified it. And so I'm hoping that my collection of stuff helped change that price. And so they lowered it to 99 USD, which is more reasonable. And then they gave us a discount, a coupon for 50% off for a time period for that GitHub Foundations. And so now it came more in par with people's expectations. So,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm big on this because if you've got like people that are in roles, like we want to make this more accessible. We're trying to reduce the barriers, right? So
Yeah.
especially if you've got a new certification path coming out, right? Like again, it's fresh for everyone, so it's in everyone's interest, right? To get adoption and obviously get feedback on the course as well, right?
Well, and I mean, it's just expectations. Like one thing I really like about Azure exams for the fundamentals is that they never ever expire. So it's like you don't feel like you're getting kind of tricked. And then obviously Microsoft makes it really easy to. I still think so. Like it's very easy to renew your certs with no cost. So it's things like that. But when you hear people saying I'm taking out a payment plan to pay for my cert, I'm not talking about
Wow.
Microsoft exams, like maybe something like a security exam or
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
network exam or whatever. It just sounds like what is going on, So it was really great that they were so responsive, and I wasn't used to it. I was so like, oh, they actually listened to me. Now I feel really mean, but let's push a bit more. So yeah,
Well,
sorry.
it's a positive effect all around, right? So
Yeah.
again, I think is it Pearson VUE, the exam provider on this?
This one is PSI, so I was actually
Oh,
kind of thrown
right.
off.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
so so you might have suggested like it's Microsoft and GitHub are they have some ties, but yeah, I kind of feel like GitHub did their own thing here because there's things that I'm noticing that is different from the standard Microsoft exams. The fact that they're using PSI, not a huge fan of PSI to be honest. I used to really like it pre-COVID, but post-COVID. Online hasn't been the greatest, but
Right.
it's exams are exams. You're going to have challenging experiences sitting online, so it's not that bad. But yeah, they're using PSI, which is different because Microsoft uses Pearson View, and everyone else seems to be using Pearson these days. Mm-hmm.
You feel like you get interrogated sometimes, right? Like I took my glasses off once, and they told
Yeah.
me that they were going to kick me out the exam.
Oh, this one. You know what? It's weird because like I remember taking a PSI exam previously, and I wasn't allowed to have when I did with Pearson. I was allowed to have a little box and put my computer on, it, so I'm not crouched over.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
PSI's like, no, but I'm allowed to have a glass of water, and I was like, what? I can have a glass of water, but I can't have this empty box that lifts my computer up. But this time when I took the test experience, again, it's different every single time. But I was 40 minutes over waiting for my exam, and it said like, wait for
Wow.
your instructor, and they were never coming. So I had to contact support, and then I'd fill everything out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah.
I was afraid to leave my room, like because I feel like if they show up when I'm gone, then they're like failed. You're up to something sketchy. But I don't know. It it wasn't the experience that I was used to. But again, I don't understand like the relationship between the test taker, because I feel like there's different experiences based on what they pay and what options they want.
Agreed. Yeah.
So the experience might have just been this, and it is a new certification. So again, not a super bad experience, but you have to not get stressed out with those online exams, right? Sorry.
So yeah, no, I was just like, as a small story, the funniest picture I ever saw on X was someone actually took one of the exams on their toilet backwards. So they rested the laptop on top of the because they were like, every room in my house has a screen, right? Because they ask you to take everything apart, right? So he's like, the only room in his house, except from the garage, right, was, I'll do it in my bathroom, right? I found that hilarious. So I take it you just need a GitHub account, right? I mean, hopefully most folks have got one. Sign in, go through the process, right? Sign up like a normal exam would.
Yep. It was much easier than actual usually signing up, because this connected to your GitHub account.
Awesome.
So like you click through and it connected. It was the sign up. The getting the exam was a very smooth experience. Yeah.
Sweet. So GitHub Foundations exam, right? So fundamentals, is that what we're talking here? That's what I was asking, right? So I've got another slide that's probably a bit more detail that we could go through and we can talk through, but collaboration, contribution. I mean, GitHub's so much more than just committing your code, right? You can use it as a support tool. You can raise issues in there. I've met countless people on there from a contribution point of view.
Yeah.
But like, understanding what GitHub's products are in general, because everyone just thinks GitHub, right? But it's actually broken down into more chunks. And that's why I said
it's an
Git
entire
basics,
developer
right?
platform. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a developer platform, right?
Yeah, it's all the stuff they have, like, and it was for me like going through and revisiting a lot of the products I hadn't seen in a while. I was like, wow, this got a lot better. Like projects got a lot better.
Yeah,
Being
yeah,
able to
yeah.
do projects on GitHub, and some things like that. So, I just find it's like my favorite platform to host my code, just because of the ecosystem around it. Like I love gists. But sorry, yep.
No, it's definitely the one, right? It's my go-to as well. Like I said, I used to spend a lot more time in Azure DevOps, but like since the projects have got better and all that kind of good stuff, I just find myself more and more like drifting into GitHub, right? All my public stuff or all my private work is in GitHub as well, right? So domain breakdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's keen to go through this. So whenever you do an exam, obviously book the exam, but then you need to know what you're studying for. And I think Andrew's going to help you with that, right? With some of the stuff that he's been doing. But whenever I do an exam, it's personally I learn by doing. That's my learning style. But then understanding, breaking it down into more manageable chunks is going to make it more achievable for you to obtain that knowledge, right? And hopefully get you past that exam. So
I'm looking at my breakdown for the domains, and they're totally wrong in my slide, and I don't know why. Like I'm looking at yours, I know they're the right ones, and I'm looking at mine. I'm like, can I show this for a second? Like,
yeah, go for it, man. Yeah.
This course has already been shipped too. I can't undo it. That's what happens when you got to make a course in 4 days. No one's double checking here. But like,
I have to get it right,
currently,
man. I work for Microsoft, right?
You got to stop your screen for 2 seconds. Oh yeah, sorry. And I'll share this screen over here. And this is the thing where it's like, yeah, I make mistakes, and it's like such an obvious mistake. But look at this. I'm looking at yours. I'm like, benefits community. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But I'm like, where's collaboration? Where's these other ones? And so I think what happened was, when I was copying and pasting from the domains, I might have went into some subdomain, and I was just like an autopilot. So yeah, I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of like the little mistakes I make in my courses. But for the most part, my courses are pretty good. You'll still pass, but that's an embarrassing one that I'll have to go correct.
Do you know what? It is what it is, man.
Yeah, yeah. I just move on to the next thing. It's just I don't got time. I just have to keep rolling with it. But if you can bring up your domains, because yours are the real domains, and so we have really it is, and like I'll fix this in my slides later on. But yeah, domain 1, introduction to Git and GitHub. So the idea is that you're supposed to generally understand what GitHub is. They do want you to know what pull requests are and branches. the only command they really wanted you to know, like for Git, was git checkout -b to create a
Right.
branch. And I mean, it's a great command, but like they didn't really care about you really understanding your remotes or how rebasing works or anything of anything. So I think that in Microsoft Learn, I don't 100% know because I made my course and then I glanced at it afterwards, but I think they have some Git education in there. I, again, dumped a lot in there because I knew that people were going to come in and be like, I don't know anything about Git. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
the exam's not going to test you on it, but you need to put some time there. And then in the GitHub part, it was just like generally, what is GitHub.com, and then beyond that, all the other domains really actually cover the services. So it's more they're everywhere else in those sections as opposed into that top level domain. Domains like more like concepts, like what is version control systems? What's a decentralized version control system? So all the first domain is always about concepts for
Do
all
you know
exams,
what?
basically.
I,
Yeah.
I, I'm glad that they've gone back to basics because, like, some people
Mm-hmm.
just don't know, right? And especially when you're working in tech, there's the assumption that the other person knows as much as you, especially when you're teaching, right? So I always try and go back to step one, just work your way through, right? Just understand what's on. It builds confidence as well, right? So, but yeah, modern development. How does that look, right? Project management. So Kanban boards, that kind of thing, agile processes. How do you create, I don't know if it's like user stories, all that good stuff. I mean, that could be its own course in itself, right? But I don't know,
User stories, no. It wasn't like everything was more about the products. So
right?
it's
Okay,
like, yeah, so it was unusual because in some areas they went a little bit deeper than you'd expect on a foundational certification.
right,
So
right,
like they would ask you, let's say it was like branch protection rules, right?
right,
For a foundation, you should know what they are, but they would literally give you a question that would be like, tell me which one of these is not, or which one of these are branch protection rules. And even for myself, I'm like, I don't know. I just open it up and fiddle with it when I work with it. And so I was a bit surprised on that. But other than that, like they had good coverage of their products. Um, there was a little bit too much focus on the enterprise features and solutions, which to me is interesting because there is that administrator exam, which is more about addressing that. Um, there wasn't a whole lot about their developer tools. Like there's nothing about the GitHub CLI, so I put that in my exam,
interesting,
or sorry, my,
interesting.
my study course. They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
they
yeah,
didn't even care if you knew how to do an SSH key. So like how you use SSH keys to like upload stuff. Didn't
yep,
test you on that. No, nothing about deploy keys. So a lot of those things are missing, but I think maybe like their focus of the exam was that they didn't want to go too developer focused, and they wanted to be more broad. I think a lot of people that aren't developers coming into this are trying to pick up those skills, so I think they could have put that in there. But um, yeah, it was like you got a taste of everything in this, like GitHub code spaces, um, GitHub actions. Everything was in here, and I think it's like really valuable because then people got a full scope. I think projects was the best thing for them to include there because I feel that people need to see more about project management when working in with Git.
for sure. I mean, if anything, it just keeps you sane, right? I I have, like, even my day to day working, right, is projects, because then I know exactly what I'm doing, what's active, what's blocked, right? It's just a good rhythm to get into. So interested in the SSH and the Azure CLI stuff's there, but like you said, right, it's probably taken care of either in another exam, or this is the first iteration, so they're trying to make it broad and accessible for people, right, coming in.
Well, it's a new exam, so making exams is not easy, and
No,
what to put in, what not to put in is an extreme challenge. But there's a lot of good stuff there, and I think a lot of people are going to benefit. Oh, one thing they really made sure that you had to know how to do was pull requests, and to me, like that is one of the most powerful, valuable features of GitHub is understanding that whole process, and so they really really wanted you to know that in the GitHub Foundations.
awesome. So I did find this. Let me try and bring it up on
Mm-hmm.
screen. I think you were mentioning it before.
Yeah, I think what they did really good here that I did not really do a good job of was more of the enterprise features. So like talking about how the single sign-on worked and things like that. Because I did get, I was actually surprised how many enterprise questions I got on my exam, and I had to go back and shore up my content. And then I came over here, and they actually had more specific things. What was interesting was how different, like however they created this one and I created this one. I know people have passed using just this. They might have had previous experience with
Yeah,
GitHub,
yeah,
so
yeah.
they might have polyfilled. I'm not sure, but it was really interesting that they were so different in terms of approach. But yeah, you can see they have an introduction to Git here.
So what I like about MS Learn is it tells you how long it's normally going to take, especially people like me, man. I'm neurodiverse, so like, I'm not going to sit there and read, right? If I can help it.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah,
about doing and videos and all that good stuff. People have different learning styles, right? And I know if you log in, you can save your progress and know where you're up to. I always find sometimes I have to have multiple learning streams to validate my knowledge, right? So maybe take the course and then do this, or vice versa. Like, I'll be honest, like when I've taken my Azure exams, it's always been because of my hands-on knowledge. It's mostly been
mm.
from external learning resources. Not to undervalue this, it's just the way I work, right? Like I think there's some real good nuggets of information in here. But it's definitely more from the provider's point of view, right? Like you said, you got a different perspective, right, by looking through this kind of thing. So
Yeah, well, that's adding that developer perspective that I thought that I'm like, this is what's missing. But again, they have things in here that I don't. What they didn't really have in the exam, which I was really surprised about, was GitHub flavored Markdown, which to me is amazing. I love GitHub flavored Markdown. Like, there's Markdown here, but I didn't get any questions on GitHub flavored Markdown, which I was quite surprised about. But that was totally fine. For GitHub, their documentation is pretty decent. There was some areas that their documentation was not up to date, and that was mostly their enterprise features. And so, like when I make exams, like I don't watch videos. I don't. I go straight to docs, straight to technical
right.
references, and I start launching things up because that's the way I learn, right? Like, I understand how it's hard for other folks because like then you don't know when to cut back. And the only way I know is as I go and do that, then I take the exam and I go, oh, I overdid it. And I have to narrow it down. But oh yeah, GitHub Copilot was in there. Yeah.
How did you get on with this? Because I get this as part of my work thing, right? Like I get
Mm-hmm.
access to this,
Mm-hmm.
but how did this feature into the exam, right? And do you need to get access to it, right, for you to learn it? I mean, what's your take
You
on it?
you do need to you get a trial, right? So
Right, you get a trial,
so
right?
it was a bit hard for me because I had both a business account and trial account. So when I originally was using you actually have to use a credit card for this. So when I spun up a new free account, and when I wanted to go use it, it was like enter your credit card, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to show that to folks because I mean, people use it for their exam. Obviously, they have to enter their credit card in, but just trying to stay on the free tier for everybody. So I had to switch over to
Yeah,
my business account, and I guess my co-founder really likes GitHub Copilot. Apparently, we had it. Like I have a license to use it. I didn't even know. So I went over there and used it there. But you do need to get a little bit of experience. But it wasn't really that many questions. It was more like how do you set it up and what was its functionalities. Codespace it was another one where I thought there was going to be a lot more deeper questions. Like it's just some areas there was deeper questions and other places there aren't. Now, to be fair, the exam does have 15 unscored questions, so those deeper ones could have been those questions, and that's why I'm being thrown off. For those who don't know, for a lot of exams, they will include because there's 60 questions on this exam, but they might include 15. They will include 15 additional questions, and they're there to gauge the difficulty. Like if people are getting the hard ones correct, then they might adjust the exam to be harder overall, or they might be there to as a prevention for cheating because you know these questions are planted there to detect cheaters. All various reasons, right? But yeah, but I I really know code spaces now. I still don't like it. I'm not going to be nice to
I
code spaces, but it's a good alternative to Gitpod. Like if you don't have a lot of money, you learn both. It's good. Pardon?
sounds quite similar to these your exams, right? They normally chuck in an extra couple of questions in there, right, to understand what's going on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say it's not as hard as Azure exams. Fundamentals, I guess, is a similar thing, but like if you've sweated Azure exams, you're not going to sweat these ones. I feel like they're fair in terms of difficulty. And it's appropriate for what GitHub is, right? Because GitHub is so ubiquitous for developers and such a broad base that I feel that an easier exam is more suited for this product. So I think that was a good call on their part. But yeah, it's they had a lot of stuff in here. It's just tons and tons. And I would say that the foundations or GitHub Foundations, I think probably will be the hardest one out of them, just because of the sheer amount of content.
It's broad,
When you
right?
look at the security one, and I'm just like, you could have had it in this exam because there's only a handful of security features in GitHub. Um, GitHub Actions will be its own thing. Admin, it's not necessarily hard. It's just a matter of having the enterprise account and knowing the features of it. But this one had the most content that you had to learn was GitHub Foundation. So I feel like if you get over this hump, the rest are more specialized and they're harder in a different way. But I feel like less broad, so it's you don't feel like you're just happy. It's like Jeopardy, if that makes sense.
Kind of like this, because this is something I tripped upon, was like defining the difference between different GitHub's accounts, right? Like personal, organizational, enterprise. Like I use my personal one, but it's actually managed by my enterprise, right? For security and all that kind of good stuff, because people used to have two separate accounts. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's like a lot of Microsoft folks that'll have their handle underscore MSFT, right? And GitHub,
Okay.
because they're like contributing to Microsoft products. But now that's got better, right? Like the bleed over, but it's a bit like a managed account at the end of the day, right? Similar to other stuff in the
Well, they
identity
definitely want
space.
you to know in the exam all the account types. I wasn't able to figure out the permissions for organizations because there's a new a classic version, a new version, and the docs were not 100% up to date. My exam didn't have any questions on it. I don't think it's contained here either in Microsoft Learn, so it was a non-issue. But exam guides. What's interesting about exam guides is that they don't always have what they say on the exam. I know
No,
that sounds really odd, but
no, I
like,
know exactly what you mean, right? I've turned up
did
to
it?
exams and there's been stuff in there and said like that wasn't in the syllabus, right? Kind of thing,
Yeah.
or yeah,
So, but yeah. So for this one, I wouldn't say there wasn't. There were, like, most things were on the exam, but I would just say that in that exam guide they did repeat some things. So I found that I didn't need to cover them the third time over. But yeah, for the most part, everything was here. But yeah, there was a lot of. I'm just going through my slides here and just looking at all the crazy amount of stuff that we covered. I really wish we did more GitHub pages because I really like GitHub pages as a feature for people to learn. But
do
literally
you know
one
what?
slide on it. Yeah.
I did that like last year. I've gone to a paid offering now
Mm-hmm.
because I cheated, right? But I
Oh,
have.
okay.
It's a great first project, right? It's for my personal website, right? And I use GitHub Pages. I think that's a great like project for people to go through the process of understanding how all this basics work, and it's free, and they'll host it for you, right? And a lot of developers use it, right, as like a living resume, right, similar to what you do on LinkedIn. But again, I think it's a great first use case story, right, to get you one familiar with either Markdown, right, or other JavaScript languages as well, right. On top of that, like I did loads of customization where I had like stars flying across the screen and all this stuff, right. But it was something different for me. So yeah, GitHub Pages are pretty awesome.
I would say the number one thing that I really liked learning about, even though it should have been very easy for me to learn, which was GitHub.dev. So,
Right.
so basically, if you're in a repo, for those who are listening, you just press period, and immediately it looks like code spaces opens. It looks like VS Code opens, but it has no compute attached to it. And so this was really good if you're doing documentation. So when I did our boot camps, I was telling everyone you have to document constantly. And so the downside of that was that I had a bunch of junk commits when I was trying to review students, like it just tons and tons, because they were making minor changes and kept pushing because I showed them through the UI at GitHub how to do that. And so that's why in the next bootcamp we did feature branches, which had its own issues or challenges. But I was telling people not to use code spaces or Gitpod to not waste their compute. And so it was just a lot of work for them to do that, and they didn't really enjoy having to do the UI, and they're trying to use external tools. But GitHub.dev, that tool makes it so easy for you to basically write documentation in your code base and not make 100 little tiny commits. And so I really appreciated that new feature, which I thought was really cool. But yeah,
That's pretty awesome, man. But
mm-hmm.
I mean, MS Learn, right? There's enough there to keep you busy. As with
Oh
anything, if
yeah,
you log in, saves your status and where you're up to. Sometimes you even get a little badge at the end of it, right? Like I talk to this about people who are starting out in tech or trying to transition in tech. Like building your network and your community is important, and showcasing what you've learned, right? Like when you earn a certification, you post the badge right out on the internet, kind of thing, for people to
yeah.
see what you've done. Because not only does it show that you've passed something, but it normally stirs up a conversation, right? Stimulates engagement, that kind of thing. So, but I like
Well,
this as well.
you find your community, right? If somebody
Yeah,
else
yeah,
has it,
exactly.
then it's now you have a new friend, right?
And what you'll also notice is that the algorithm on LinkedIn favors badges, right, from
Oh
certifications
yeah.
and stuff. So you'll find that your profile, your presence will be airlifted, right, and brought to people's attention. So building your network is understated. I talked about that as like part of like a soft skills kind of thing, because we concentrate on the tech, but then there's the other bits and pieces on the outside, right? So I like this. Like, how many times have you seen this? Contribute to an open source project. I mean, we see this on X every 5 minutes, right? Someone's always tweeting about
That's
it.
how I started my career, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's how I got my first job was through an open source. I couldn't get a job in Toronto because I wasn't from the area. I didn't have the computer science background at the time. That's how the
yeah,
market was. But I was able to contribute to open source, and I did so much that they wanted to hire me, and they flew me out to Spain, right? So I love open source, especially if you're, trying to. I still think it's possible to land roles through open source
for sure.
if you know what you're doing. An exam, I did not know what they wanted me to teach people for open source and inner source. Like, they have stuff here, but it's just like the questions just like threw me for a loop. Every exam will always have like, I don't want to say BS, but it's like, it's what do you call like when you get like things that are like very it's like
Ambiguous.
top level mantras of the company and the good missions that they do and things like that. Not BS.
It's marketing, right?
Marketing. There you go. So it's like marketing language, and it's like that's cool. Like they want you to have a perception of what GitHub is based on the relationship with open source. But I feel like they don't have to go to the point of like, let's talk about inner source. Like I could not make sense of inner source because it's not a like a defined framework. So I kept going like, what is inner source? And I just kept getting more marketing uh, jargon, and then I eventually figured it out that it's just like it's not anything. It's just like
It's
your
proprietary.
company.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, but I was expecting like, oh, you follow these exact steps, but there actually is a couple organizations that provide structure for those that need structure, but I was struggling on those things, but that was me.
No, it's. I think every company does it differently, right?
Hmm.
And it's behind closed doors, right? When you think about it, because it's in a source, right? It's proprietary code software. But with open source, there's probably a lot of frameworks from like the Linux Foundation or the Cloud Native Foundation, right? Where projects are maintained and people just go, they seem to be doing a really good job, right? We'll just replicate that framework, right? And how we form our repos, how we commit our work, all that good stuff, right? So yeah, with inner source software, every company does it a little bit different. It's probably my advice, right? They've got their own certain way of structuring it out. But yeah,
Well, and
but I'm
I
glad.
think it's just like if you're used to working in enterprises, you're probably used to that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But if you haven't got a job
for
in
me,
tech,
open
how do
source,
you know,
no.
right?
Yeah, exactly, right.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, like managing report. There's a lot in here, right? I know we've got to cover some of the other certs, but yeah, that's a great place to
Well,
look.
I mean, this one has a bit of everything, right? So
Yeah, I
like
like that.
this kind of reminds me of the SC900 that Azure has, where it's like covers all of security, but it's like they then have specialized certs for each part of it. So there's like
The
4 or 5,
path.
I forget. There's like there's four or
Yeah.
five security certs. Like one's focused on identity. There's another one that's focused on something else, like a component of the security, and those ones go more in detail. And so I feel like these other three, they get covered, so you have familiarity with them, but then you get the deep dive on those other three. So you'll see some repeat as we talk about these other three.
There's also the study guide, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's on GitHub's website. Again,
And the way I engineered my course for this one is I literally took a spreadsheet. I went through every single. I don't usually do this, but I made a line item because it's such a new cert. No one had anything for it. There's no
right.
research on it, so I literally had to cover every single item, no matter what. So I had to go through every single thing, and that's why I have a 10-hour course, which probably doesn't need to be 10 hours, but it is.
What's the first
Yeah,
iteration, right? It's like you said, you have to
yeah,
cover everything, every nook and cranny, because it might turn up in
no,
the exam, right? Kind of thing.
yeah,
So this is a great
whoever did
place.
it.
Again, breaking those domains down, right? Like if you think
Mm-hmm.
about building blocks, like you can't eat an elephant all at once, right? You got to break it down. So using this is on the GitHub website as well, but grabbing this study guide, you know, because like it just says you need to know GitHub code spaces, and you're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, I need to describe GitHub code spaces. I need to identify how to start a GitHub code space, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's giving you a bit more information to break that down, and how to recognize and add and configure dev containers, right? Because you might be like, well, what's a dev container? So
I
understanding
spent a
how that
lot of
works.
time. I spent a lot of time explaining dev containers. I was like, "You got to know this," and then it's on the exam. No questions. No questions on dev containers. And I was just like, "Okay, I overdid this part." But like to me, I think that in practicality, learning a dev container is so valuable, not just in code spaces because it's a standard for
Just
VS
in
Code.
general, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
But
but yeah, I
project
overdid
project
code
management's
spaces.
in there. I mean
Mm-hmm.
this is what you'd be using in your day to day, right? If you're DevOps, platform engineering, SRE, whatever the term is this week, right? You this is stuff that you'll be
Platform
doing.
engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. This
Did we?
is
Did you cover platform engineer?
I'm doing it at the moment.
Okay.
Newsflash: if you used to build data centers and rack servers, you were a platform engineer, right? So it's a bit of a running joke, right? By the older
Mm-hmm.
generation, right? At the moment, well, I racked a
Well,
Cisco
yeah.
switch, so I'm a platform engineer, right? So, but it's different, right, with the cloud. So that's something I am doing. I've got a couple of talks coming up, right? So watch out for
Hmm.
those. I recently did a video with the Radius crew from Microsoft who developed some tools around platform engineering as well. So,
Cool.
but yeah, understanding all this stuff again, a bit like Git, right? It was you should know
Super
this,
valuable.
and no one teaches you it, but like
Well,
stand
and I
ups,
think
all
like,
that good
oh,
stuff,
sorry.
right? It
Yes.
all ties in, right? So
Well, I think like again, I keep improving my boot camps. The first time I did this, we didn't do feature branching. The next time we actually used the whole Git workflow, and then the next boot camp, I'm like, I need to include this project management stuff because people don't even know. They have no idea what it's like, the experience of working in a team, and then like when you go on the job, like that's the first thing they want you to know how to do. And yes, you can learn it on the job, but if you can hit the ground running, then you're gonna have more opportunity to showcase your skills early on. And so it's so valuable, the project management skills. And it's nice that it's free, that you can use it. Where it's like, I guess Jira is free, but like Jira is a headache. Sorry, but I have to use it sometimes. Do you ever have to use Jira, or are you free of
no,
Jira?
no,
Okay, I can't imagine
I
having to
use
use Jira
this,
again.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope so.
it's free, again, right? It's free, but it's where all the developers go to GitHub. It's like the ecosystem, right? I'm a big believer in what do I need to know for my job, because I have to learn so much anyway, right? Like just in general, you could work in anything, any career. What do I need to know for my job? Well, if you know this, you're halfway there, right? Like you said, and you start a new gig. If you're junior as well, like imposter syndrome gets to all of us, right? It gets to me all the time. But you enter in it, you've got these devs, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm taking this job, right? ID or whatever," and you've got a scrum master going, "Fantastic!" And the next day they expect like I don't know an update, but like what's going on, and you're like, I didn't even know how to use projects in the first place, right? It's daunting, right? So anything you can do outside, right? It's that safe space, as I like to call it. It's always great to make mistakes at home in your home lab.
There was a feature in the security thing that was so useful when I was making the course.
Yeah,
Oh, you know what it was? So I generated out a personal access token,
right. Pat
and I
token, right?
said
Yeah,
like never. I'm like never put this in your repo. Never put this in your repo.
exactly.
And I somehow left it in like a scratch file and pushed it. But because in an earlier video I had turned on the secret scanning video, or
Did it
sorry,
get it?
secrets scanner, just
Yeah,
randomly I was like, yeah, we'll just turn this on. I totally forgot about it. But if I'd done it in another order, I would have had so many people pushing their personal
you'd have
access
got
tokens.
abused, right? exactly.
Yeah. The thing is, like, if you're watching my videos, always watch a little bit ahead, okay? Just in case I mess up. And like most people that watch my videos have learned that by now. But again, it depends on how fast I'm shipping content out. This one was really fast, but luckily the order of the videos makes it not a problem. But like, I thought it was so cool to see that. I was like, oh, nice. That was a great feature. So I was pretty happy about that.
Like you said, there seems to be a great mix in here. I love the fact that the
Yeah.
security scanning got you right. That just shows that it's working. But security and administration, like I think 2FA or multi-factor authentication, right? I've got that turned on for all my stuff. But define different access permissions, that kind of thing. But then, yeah, there's more stuff on the enterprise managed users, right, which you talk about in your course. So,
Yeah.
which can be problematic, right? So, like you said, you have to either get the trial or sign up for that, right? So,
Well, I think it's a little bit hard to absorb at this level. Like, it's still enterprise is great to learn, but it's just for whatever why they wanted you know at this point, I don't know. But again, I'm sure they'll tweak it and figure out what works best. But the GitHub mobile app's awesome.
oh
I don't
yeah,
know what
for
people use
sure.
for authentication, but like, of course, you could use Microsoft Authenticator or Authy or something like that. But the GitHub one is like it's like single press, or you enter two buttons in. It's so much faster to use. So I was glad again to do this course because it improved my workflow as a someone that's used GitHub forever. Do you know what I mean? There's even more stuff for me to learn, so it's huge value to even if even if you think you know what you're doing.
Grab the
So
app. I've been using the app for about 4 years. It, like you said,
mm-hmm.
it's the security, but then it doesn't feel painful, right? When you're trying to log in and all that good stuff. So, get on the
It
app
was
again. It's
seamless. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? There's another way of getting in, right? Or a different perspective. Like I used to read the readmes on the train on my
Yeah.
phone, right? Because
Oh yeah.
like I've had to catch up. Like someone said, I'm doing a code check in, right? Can you give it a once over? Yeah, let me check it out. Like on my phone, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. The only
Yeah,
thing that's kind of like dated probably now is I mean it's in the exam, but it's GitHub Desktop. I didn't fully understand. Well, I was thinking about what was the use case for it, but like GitHub Desktop, the only thing I wish it had that would make it really useful is if it had a way of visualizing the Git graph, but you can't do that. So
right.
now like Code Spaces has kind of been because you can install extension to get a Git graph for that. It's kind of beat it out, but at the same time, I guess desktop doesn't use up any compute. Anyway, it's nice that they have a lot of options. That's all I'm trying to say. It's cool that they
I
have
haven't
so
used
many
the desktop
tools.
one in a while. I think I got it because I remember the icon looking pretty groovy in the beginning, right? So you know when you're first starting out with GitHub, and you're like, ooh,
Oh
these
yeah.
tools, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh, the experience when you install the GitHub Desktop's really nice.
it is really cool. But once I got the VS Code extension, I sort of just pushed pushed it away,
Yeah.
right? It was like,
I
well, I don't really need it
but it
anymore,
existed
right?
before these VS Code and
Exactly,
even
right?
cloud developer environments, so it served a place. I just wish it brought over that one thing, which was the visualizer, because like otherwise people will just go to Kraken. If people still use Kraken, I don't even know anymore. I feel like everything's in VS Code. I'm just like I don't even leave that ecosystem now. But
Same here. Again, it comes back to what do I need to know for my job? Just VS Code, right? And then just work on from there. But getting
Oh, look at this question. I literally, well, not a question, but I'm
good for it.
literally forced to use Git in college, and they aren't teaching us how to use it. This is why I'm here. Well, that's good. Um, I mean, we're not fully teaching Git here, teaching GitHub, but this is the challenge that we said earlier, which was like people need to know Git, and people are just assuming that you already know it, and we
Exactly.
need to have more stuff. If you want to learn Git, there's a few resources out there. Technically, Microsoft Learn has a tiny crash course. I have a tiny crash, or I have a much larger crash course in my free course. And at some point, I will. I'm just going to plug here, Kevin, that I'm
Good
going
for
to
it.
do a Git boot camp. So look out for Andrew Brown's 2024 Big Bonanza Git boot camp. I
I
don't
always
know.
love the names for your boot camps that are coming up, right? You drop like the seed
Yeah.
on X, right, or whatever, and it's like, I'm thinking of doing this. Do you think people will turn up? And there's like 2,000 likes straight away, right? And then it becomes the comical name, right, attached to it. So
I think the trick is just listen to your audience and give them time to like, because I'm like, people say I'm an influencer. I'm not. It's like I'm listening to what people want, and they're telling me what they want. So it just as Nicholas here says, like, I need to learn Git. A lot of other people do.
we
So
all do, right?
um,
Like,
yeah,
we've all, yeah. Like I said, I wasn't taught it. It was like my colleagues sort of give me information on it, and just setting it up, right? It's literally it's platform agnostic versioning control for your code, right? So, but it's like the missing link layer. Like you can't really use this without it, kind of thing, and everything else. So it's really fundamental, right, to
yeah.
understanding.
It's like if you're going to build a house, you better know how to use a skill saw, right? So it's the one that's there's another name for it. I don't know what it's called, but it's like it's cuts wood and shows how much I know about
There you
trades.
go, right?
But it's like when I was going because I've been a developer since like 2005, right? Like when I was 16, 17, 18, or however old I was I don't know how old I am anymore. And so, when Git came out, everybody was learning it at the same time,
Exactly.
right? And so it just became like, even if you weren't good at it, everybody had the same problem. Like they didn't know how to do branching and stuff like that. So we've gone past that, and it's been this came out in 2005. Yeah, like literally when I started is when Git came out, and it became more popularized a year or two afterwards. And so it gets overlooked because it's just assumed that you already know it. But there's new people always learning. So why don't we have these resources? It's similar for other cloud certifications. Like, you're assumed you know a little bit more about virtual machines or a little bit more about operating systems or things like that. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm big on that. Like, I'm actually going to do a video um, in a couple of weeks because, like, I came from an infrastructure and security background,
Mm-hmm.
and I was made to be a developer, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the way the industry was going, right? And I just didn't have a clue. And I always talk about this journey and how it relates, and because ultimately you get to the infrastructure as a code piece, right? Because that's what I need to know for my job, kind of approach. But you need to know like
Yeah.
all of this, right? Because you're
Well,
submitting code, right? Pretty much. So
and just as your shirt says, code to cloud, we need to teach more people the coding components so that they can be successful in cloud and not pretend that everything's ClickOps. So, which, I mean, you can
ClickOps.
get pretty far with ClickOps, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that argument because
Oh, I'm just gonna tell you, like Bako, my co-founder, like he used to manage like virtual machines and like lots of them, and he did all ClickOps, and I taught him
yeah,
coding, right?
ESXi,
Like this
right?
was years ago, but
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
It's
but that's how it was at one point because it made sense, but we're coming back full circle. People are getting more productive using like fully utilizing scripts, but you know, GitHub
awesome.
Actions. Let's talk about GitHub Actions. How
Yeah,
you okay for time?
we're gonna have to whistle stop tour on this one. This is probably the last one we're gonna able to get through because we
Oh,
spent so
okay.
much time on the foundations. Maybe we get Andrew back,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
but let's just do
I'll
GitHub
probably have
Actions.
the course made by then. Yeah.
Exactly right. We'll just keep you coming back, right?
Yeah.
But I think this is a big one because once you got your repos, you got your platform. We talk about automation, right? So again, from an infrastructure point of view, it's how do I connect this to my cloud solution provider? how do I get pipelines or GitHub action pipelines to deploy my code, ultimately my infrastructure, or as like here from Andrew's background, how do I get my app runtime deployed to the infrastructure, right? Or whatever is going on, whatever the designation is. So, like I said, it's a little bit different from Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions, right? The
Mm-hmm.
YAML's different. And you're like, well, what's YAML? Again, like Git, you need to know YAML, right? So you start learning about all this stuff, right? Um, but basically setting up a basic GitHub action, right, to deploy, I don't know, a storage account in Azure. That's one user
GitHub
case.
Actions,
Yeah,
for those who are listening, GitHub Actions is it's a very besides like people using Jenkins and whatever. GitHub Actions is probably the most commonly used CI/CD because it's so easy to use and so many people just love the experience. I'm halfway there on it. Like I've known for a long time that I should be using it, but I've been
yeah.
sticking with my really archaic deployment mechanisms like code pipeline over in AWS or whatever, or using Jenkins. But GitHub Actions is like it's like a need to know. I feel like if you're going to learn a CI/CD tool, this is the one I would probably prioritize because it's so widely used and it's so robust. Again, depends on where you live. Jenkins might be something you want to learn, but I think it's. I don't know what your opinions are, Kevin, but I think it's one that I would prioritize people learn.
Again, comes back to what do I need to know for my job, right?
Yeah,
So if your company's using something else, then learn that. But like the community as a whole, I would say there's a lot of traffic pointed
community
towards
likes it.
this. I use
Community likes this
this.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really like it. It gets better every day. Again, you get to learn about continuous integration, continuous deployment, and it doesn't matter if you're from an infrastructure or developer background, right? You're understanding this, and then when we talk about the other certs, maybe in future sessions, talk about how security works with this, that kind of thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
how do we shift left, right? How do we capture misconfigurations or before you've even deployed anything, you're securing things on the fly before it gets built, right? So it's going to do nothing but like add kudos points to your resume, your career, right? Or just general knowledge. Like I use this personally, and wherever customers are using this, I'm using this as well as much as possible. So, but we'll just quickly just go through the domain breakdown because I am conscious of time, and I did forget to press the go stream button on LinkedIn. Fail fast, my friends. Fail fast, right? Um, there's a lot less domains in this one, right? I feel like it's broken down a little bit more. So author and maintain workflows, so
More
stages.
subdomains though.
Yeah,
So
more
like yeah,
subs. Yeah.
there's less content than the GitHub Foundations if you break it all out. But sorry, yep.
But yeah, consume workflows. How do I use those workflows to deploy whatever it is I'm trying to deploy? Right? What's the end result? Author and maintain actions. Like I said, YAML. How do I stage that out? How does that work? How do I get into the flow of how that's built out as a framework? And then there's another enterprise one, right? So managing GitHub Actions for the enterprise. So just quickly, again, we've got the learning path, right? And MS Learn.
And I think this is the only resource right now for GitHub
Yeah,
Actions.
I
I
yeah.
don't have a course for it, so this would
Stand
be the
by.
recommended way to learn. Yeah,
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 stand
stand
by,
by.
right? So there's MS Learn. Like you said, right? There's less in this one. Like that's why I like that fundamentals one because it gives you a taste and a flavor for what's broadly
Everything.
available. So
Mm-hmm.
automate deployment tasks using GitHub Actions, right? So break down there. But if we go back to the deck, again, we've got the study guide,
Yeah.
right? So
Another interest. It's pretty interesting that I don't know why they don't take the enterprise part and put it in the admin because I feel like the admin is still more the enterprise one, but they have an enterprise section here at the end on domain 4. But it's not as intimidating as the GitHub Foundations. I mean, there is things like I covered it in my course, but I don't think it was necessary. Like GitHub Container Registry was something that I did in my course because I thought it was so useful. But you can see that is a component that's being added there. GitHub packages, which I covered in Foundations just in case because I just want to cover stuff there. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't super duper heavy, but again, I haven't sat this exam. Apparently, we've started writing some practice exam questions for it, but because someone else on my team sat it, so they said it wasn't too hard. But I personally haven't sat it, so I'm not sure how detailed the questions become. Apparently, there are sample practice exam questions as well. Where they are, I don't know. When I first took the exam, there were none. And so
Right.
now apparently there are sample practice exam questions somewhere from GitHub, I believe.
Okay.
So that's something people might want to check out.
Interesting, because once you crack a pipeline, as I like to call it, you then get to see your code fail. Then you can start rerunning it every time you make an adjustment.
It does. I would say it's like, again, it's not hard to learn these things, but you do have to spend a lot of time. Like, it's just the same thing with infrastructure as code. Not so much on Azure, because ARM templates are so easy to generate out. And Azure Bicep is such a solid IAC tool, but CI/CD pipelines, you're just spending a lot of time watching things break and then going tweak, tweak, tweak. And you better have a good mobile phone in between builds.
I'm not only I got a Terraform background, right? I got the Open Tofu guys coming on the show this week.
Oh yeah.
So I'm interested to see what's going on over there as well. But Bicep is really getting some love. Like, people are saying it's solid. It's like the things that you can do with it, right? The authoring experience, that kind of thing. And like, I don't know if people. So I actually got it like with the Radius tool. Like, I've got it deployed on a local Kubernetes cluster, right? So effectively, it's on-prem, right? So I'm trying to figure out what the reasoning behind this is. Maybe it's breaking out of Azure, right? But we'll see. But yeah, nothing but love for that at the moment. Bicep.
It's to me, it's the developer experience. It was so easy. It was like writing. It didn't even have AI in it. It was like already writing all the code for me, and I'm like, what is going on here? It's like Terraform is great, but I have to look everything up. Whereas Azure Bicep, even though writing Azure infrastructure can be a bit verbose, it just did a lot of the heavy lifting. It was just it was so nice. Yeah. For me,
I'll give Alex. He's the product manager at Microsoft for Bicep. I'll give him your feedback, Andrew, because
we'll just tell him.
He's always interested, right? Yeah. He's always interested, right? Yeah. Like, what's going out in the world. But I'm gonna stop sharing.
I haven't made an Azure Bicep course yet. I don't know why. I know it. Yeah.
Maybe we should collaborate on that, right? Yeah. Maybe we should collaborate on that. But
if you want,
sounds good to me. Just want to say thanks to everybody. Thanks for some of the questions that have come through. Hopefully this has been useful. I will drag Andrew back because I'm sure he's got more stuff in the pipeline, right? It's always fun to have him on. But yeah, we'll catch you on the next one, and thanks for now. Bye.
Yeah.